I think every Canadian should be concerned. If we don't have the right to privacy online, we don't have the right to criticize the government anonymously. The other part is what I call this sneak attack on free expression. The government is banning speech that might just be unpopular, rude, divisive, transgressive, offensive. Platforms are going to take down content.
Basically, that's digital ID. Like, is it fair to say that this bill is also a digital ID bill?
I don't particularly want to have to upload my passport in order to scroll X or Facebook.
Journalism and commentary 1 year anniversary.
I don't believe journalism being funded by the government is the solution.
You have to rebuild the foundation.
You have to retell the story.
Market conservative
Other news that actually matters.
I hence wanted to ask. I think they should answer their questions, especially if they're politically charged.
Mark Carney has introduced legislation to ban kids from social media, but that Bill C-34, may be the greatest threat to free speech that Canada has seen in decades. And that is because this bill goes far beyond banning those under 16 from social media, which that alone raises some pretty serious concerns about a potential mandatory digital ID. It's because the most consequential part of this bill is the creation of a new government bureaucracy to regulate the internet. According to experts, this new Digital Safety Commission of Canada that the bill would create would be a super regulator. Under Bill C-34, social media platforms and AI chatbots would be required to reduce exposure to what the government considers to be quote-unquote harmful content. And what is considered acceptable public discourse, well, it wouldn't be up to citizens anymore. It would be up to bureaucrats in Ottawa. There are other concerns about free expression and online censorship in this bill. So to break down this bill and what it means, I'm joined by Christine Van Geyn. She is a lawyer and the interim executive director of the Canadian Constitution Foundation, an organization dedicated to protecting the rights and freedoms of Canadians. And after speaking to Christine, I've come to the conclusion that the consequences of this bill are chilling and worse than I initially thought they were when I reached out to her for an interview. This is a must-watch interview. Canadians, we need to know what our government is up to, what it's trying to do, and this here, I believe, is very concerning. So without further ado, let's get to it. But first, be sure you are subscribed, as up to 80% of my viewers are not subscribed. It takes a second to do this. It's free. I'm really trying to get to 20,000 subscribers. We're almost there. Hype and like the video, hit the notification bell, and consider getting a paid channel membership for less than $5 a month, as I'm one of the only journalists left in this country that refuses to take subsidies from the government. Other so-called independent media outlets have caved and are now funded by the government, but I never will. Christine Van Geyn, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So we're talking today about Bill C-34, the social media bill. The government says that this is to make social media platforms and even AI chatbots safer for children. But your organization, the Canadian Constitution Foundation, has argued that Bill C-34 is the Liberal government's latest attempt to regulate online speech. Can you explain what you mean by this?
Yes, so this is a really big bill. It does a lot of different things. Some of them are about keeping children safe, but some of them are more about regulating what we can say online. So, I mean, basically, the big thing that this bill does is it creates a digital safety commission, which is a large new bureaucracy. And it also would require online platforms to mitigate what they define as online harms or what they define as harmful content. And look, a lot of this truly is harmful content. I think platforms should and already are taking down things like revenge porn, child sexual abuse imagery, terrorism content. No one has any objection to ensuring that that type of content isn't available. It should not be available. The problem is the government in that list of online harmful content also includes content that foments hatred. Now, revenge porn, child sexual abuse imagery, that's objective. We all know what that is. Content that foments hatred is a very subjective term that is broadly defined. It's struggled with by lawyers, by judges, by police, by crown attorneys, and regulating that type of content will result in a chill in online speech. It will result in content online platforms who are concerned about the new regulator removing proactively content that might just be, unpopular.
That's concerning, to say the least. Tell me a bit more about this Digital Safety Commissioner. What would that look like? How would it be made up? And what's concerning about it?
Yes. So we don't have a lot of details about it right now. Basically, I think it would be 3 to 5 individual commissioners who work for this Digital Safety Commission. The commission would enforce a few different things. It would enforce a duty to act responsibly, so for social media companies and AI chatbots, by requiring them to mitigate that harmful content. So that list of objective harmful content, sexual abuse imagery, but also sort of subjectively harmful content, like content that foments hatred. The Digital Safety Commission would also enforce a duty to protect children for social media companies, which would give them the power to keep children under the age of 16 off of social media services and also off of pornographic websites. And we don't know yet what that will look like. Basically, the age verification process is not included in the legislation. The platforms are supposed to come up with an approach that will be approved or not approved by the new Digital Safety Commission. And the Digital Safety Commission will also enforce a duty for social media companies to remove content that sexually victimizes a child or re-victimizes a survivor, as well as removes revenge porn. So that's a separate category as well that the Digital Safety Commission would address. And obviously, I have no concerns with that. I do have concerns with perhaps the approach, which is the creation of this new commission with a huge mandate and potentially huge bureaucracy. Keep in mind, the CRTC has a smaller mandate than the internet. The internet is a lot bigger than broadcasting now, and regulating the entire internet is going to take a huge amount of resources. So these 3 to 5 commissioners will likely be supported by hundreds of new bureaucrats in Ottawa. The CRTC has about 700. This will undoubtedly have that many or potentially more. So that's the role of the commission, and that's what we expect it might look like. But as I said, a lot of the details are going to come by way of regulation. We don't know a whole lot about what exactly everything, including the most important parts of this bill, look like yet.
So basically, this is kind of like pass the bill now, find out later what the regulations are going to be. We don't know a lot about how this is going to play out until an unelected commissioner and commission make the rules.
Yes, that's how this government and the Trudeau government did a lot of their legislating, by delegation. They would create these shell statutes and then delegate authority to these regulators, who then, on judicial review, if you want to challenge any of their decisions, actually get a more deferential standard. So it is, I don't know what the members of parliament and the cabinet ministers think their job is in Ottawa, but it sure doesn't seem to be making laws. It is creating these shells that then delegate their power, and regulators, unelected regulators, make up the rules. That's what they did with the Digital Streaming Act as well. They created a lot of empty shell legislation, which the regulator, the CRTC, would then come up with the specific rules. So the stuff that's most concerning in this legislation, the one that a lot of people are talking about, is the age verification, because there's a lot of different ways to go about that. I don't particularly want to have to upload my passport in order to scroll X or Facebook, but the government hasn't created the system. They're delegating that to the regulator. So we don't know what that really important and potentially privacy violating approach will be. because no one elected is going to be coming up with it. It's going to be come up with by private companies and by unelected bureaucrats.
Well, that's the thing. So with this bill, you could potentially have to upload ID or a photo, and basically that's digital ID. Like, is it fair to say that this bill is also a digital ID bill because there is a digital ID component to this?
So, some people are saying that we don't know yet. We don't know what that looks like. I don't really. My criticism of the bill is not that it's digital ID, because I think that term is often, it's unclear to a lot of Canadians what digital ID means. But I think when you explain to Canadians that an unelected regulator and a private company might require you to either upload your driver's license or passport in order to scroll certain pages of the internet, or might require your face to be scanned, which is what some countries do. They'll have a technology that looks at an image of your face and uses AI to determine your age. That's the way age verification is implemented in some countries. A lot of Canadians will be and should be uncomfortable with that. There is a big reason we want to protect privacy online. A lot of people really use the internet for things that might, be embarrassing for them. They might not want to have a record of which pornographic websites they like to visit. They might be engaged in some type of advocacy that they're concerned the government doesn't approve of. They might be in a vulnerable position where they are a victim of some type of domestic violence, and they are uncomfortable with having their address held by a private company that could be subject to privacy leaks. And we all have a constitutionally protected right to privacy. And while we don't know what this is going to look like because the government hasn't told us, I think every Canadian should be concerned. And privacy is pretty foundational to democracy. If we don't have the right to privacy online, we don't have the right to criticize the government anonymously, which is very important to a lot of people.
For sure. So why are they doing this? Because, Christine, Canada is not like the first country to do this. Australia has banned social media for kids, and it's not worked. 70% of kids have managed to bypass the social media ban, according to the government's own data. So if we have concrete example that this sort of legislation does not work, and we also have a bill that happens to very conveniently have all of these other elements that are not good for free speech and privacy, then, what's the point? Like, what's the motive behind this?
So I think that there are multiple motives because, as I said, this bill does a lot, and it does a lot of things that Canadians do want, that I want. I want the government to take a harder stance on child sexual abuse. I want the government to take a harder stance on people who use revenge porn to hurt a former partner. That type of conduct is morally reprehensible, and we need to condemn it and address it. Canadians are asking for that. And I will also say that as a mom of 3 kids, I have a lot of concerns about social media use. As a human being, I have concerns about social media use. I try hard to mitigate my own use. So I think a lot of people are asking for this. On the kids and social media question, though, I think what we need to ask ourselves is, even if we don't like that, even if we don't like kids on social media, is it the role of government? Is it the role of government to tell our kids not to be on social media? Personally, I think it's the role of me as a mom to deal with my kids' screen time. And, some families might disagree and say, my kids, my 15-year-old is mature. They can use TikTok a little bit to post a music video, and I'm totally fine with that. Different families make different decisions. I don't want the government coming in and telling me how many vegetables my kids need to eat either, even though maybe they should eat more vegetables. It's just not the role of the state. So I think on that side, it is something some Canadians are asking for this. I think we just need to question it. The other part of the bill, though, is what I have called they have these things that Canadians want, but the other part is what I call this sneak attack on free expression, because they are regulating all kinds of speech that is subjective, that is not the same type of harmful content that we all recognize, like these sexual abuse images. The government, by banning speech or sort of making speech subject to the Digital Safety Commission, is banning speech that might just be unpopular, rude, divisive, transgressive, offensive. And the government knows it cannot directly ban that type of speech. It would be unconstitutional. So what it's doing is it's outsourcing this censorship power to online private platforms by creating this regulator that strikes fear into the hearts of platforms. The government knows it can't constitutionally ban that speech outright, so it's trying to achieve that same censorship role outcome by pressuring private platforms through a regulator. Platforms are going to take down content that is what we call lawful but awful, or maybe not even awful, just unpopular, because they are afraid a regulator might say that it foments hatred. They just want to avoid liability. And when we apply that to chatbots, we're going to end up with woke AI, the type of woke AI we saw when Google released its Gemini image generator back in 2024, and it was giving us images of Black Vikings and Chinese Nazi SS soldiers because it was putting its thumb on the scale in favor of a progressive vision of diversity. And that, when a lot of people get their information from AI, a lot of people ask AI or chat or Grok questions now instead of Googling it, it's going to dramatically affect democratic outcomes, and it's going to affect the way human beings think, because who controls the algorithm can control democracy.
For sure. Let's continue on the AI chatbot. Christine, you wrote a piece in the Hub, and in there you said that out of curiosity, you asked ChatGPT to create a list of hypothetical questions that might be limited because of the concern that an answer may foment hate under C-34. What were some of the questions or answers that ChatGPT generated?
Yeah, so keep in mind, the regulator is going to prohibit chat from giving you responses that would foment hatred. So it wouldn't control the questions you can ask Grok or ask Chat or ask Gemini. It would control the answers that it might give you. So you're free to ask the questions, but now it might give you some woke answer the way Gemini image generator did back in 2024. So I asked what would be some questions that your answers might foment hatred. And it gave me a lot of examples. Well, I'll just read some of them. What are the violent crime rates of different racial groups in Canada? What explains racial disparities in incarceration rates? Do immigrants from some countries integrate more successfully than others? Which immigrant groups have the highest unemployment rates? What percentage of terrorist attacks worldwide are committed in the name of Islam? Which religious groups are most opposed to same-sex marriage? Are there biological differences in athletic performance between males and females? Why do some ethnic groups outperform others academically? What explains differences in social stability among racial groups? And has diversity improved or hurt social cohesion? And obviously, the key point is none of these questions are inherently hateful. These are normal questions that a lot of academics, journalists, policymakers, or just curious Canadians might examine. But an AI company subject to Bill C-34 might fear that the answers that the AI gives to those questions could be characterized as fostering hostility towards a protected group. So instead of, the government banning the questions, which it knows it can't do, it is creating this regulatory chill so that the AI will no longer answer questions like this if C-34 prohibits the fomenting of hatred.
Can I ask a follow-up about platforms like YouTube and algorithms? Because, you touch on something important here, which is companies being fearful of breaking the law, especially because the consequences can be massive. Under C-34, could we see YouTube deprioritize or shadow ban conservative channels out of the fear that some of the content could foment hatred?
I mean, we don't even know if this bill will apply to YouTube because it's determined by regulation which social media companies will be subject to any of these regulations. So if YouTube is subject to it, then yes, there would be a requirement on YouTube if it's a regulated platform subject to the authority of the Digital Safety Commission. There would be a requirement that YouTube enforce a duty to act responsibly, which would require them to mitigate harmful content, and that includes content that foments hate. So if YouTube thinks that a particular video foments hatred, which by the way, they already have policies, YouTube already has takedown policies that they've developed on their own. It's just that a private company's interpretation of what is hateful is going to be different from a government's interpretation. And the government comes with the power of punishment, which is millions of dollars in fines against a platform, as well as either a fixed amount or a percentage of global revenues of that company, which for YouTube, of course, is enormous. So there will be an incentive to take down edge content that may not actually meet the standard of fomenting hatred, whatever that's determined to mean, instead of leaving it up, which is in the benefit of free expression. And look, hateful content, like I don't like hateful content. I think the correct response to hateful content is to call it out for what it is. And I do that regularly. I see all kinds of stuff I don't like online, and I say so. I think when we're confronted with terrible ideas, it's our obligation as citizens to push back. We shouldn't expect the government to protect us from ideas that we don't like. We need to stand up for ourselves and for what is right.
So, one way that people around the world bypass internet regulation is through VPNs. Now, the Carney government has another bill called Bill C-22, which is again being pitched in the name of safety. And this bill has the potential to break encryption. And that's been a concern raised by VPN providers. I had your colleague Josh DeHaas come and talk about that bill. And there's a link in the description below for those who want to watch that one. Is there a scenario where like the government could ban VPNs? I mean, they've already put in place Bill C-22, which is not friendly to VPNs. They're going to put this new bill, which, I mean, a VPN kind of circumvents the whole thing. Like, do you think we're headed towards that direction?
I mean, the VPN companies have told us we're headed towards that direction. The government doesn't need to outright ban a VPN, a virtual private network that people use to ensure that they're private online. They don't need to ban it in order to get rid of it, just like they didn't need to ban news on Facebook or Instagram. They can create a regulatory regime and a legal system and architecture that forces these companies to choose to exit the marketplace. And VPNs have already said that they're going to do that. A number of VPNs have said that if Bill C-22 passes in its current form, that they would leave Canada. I mean, NordVPN has publicly stated that Bill C-22 would require it to weaken encryption or abandon its no logs protection. ExpressVPN has said that its no logs architecture and encryption are not negotiable and they would leave the country. DuckDuckGo has said that it would withdraw its VPN from Canada. Proton VPN has said that there is no universe in which it would compromise its no logs architecture because they're based in Switzerland and they need to comply with Swiss law. And yeah, I mean, the government, when they were implementing the Online News Act, which is the reason Facebook and Meta are no longer allowing news on their platforms, the government treated that like it was some sort of negotiating position. And they were like, they're just threatening. Well, it wasn't a threat. And I don't think that the government should treat these VPNs as threats either. I think that they should take them seriously. And the consequence of VPNs leaving Canada are really serious, especially when combined with legislation like C9 and C34, which C9 creates criminal penalties for hate speech, and that would apply online. It means that people who really value their privacy, lawyers, journalists, activists, people who handle sensitive information, or people who just don't want their information sold online by data brokers, that now they will not have the ability to reduce their exposure to internet surveillance. They won't be able to protect their communications on public Wi-Fi networks. It will be easier to build detailed records of their online activity. And that is a bad thing for privacy. The government doesn't need to outright ban it. The VPNs have already said that as a consequence of C-22, they would withdraw from our country, and we'll all be worse off.
Yeah, that's concerning. And it's also very convenient, all of these bills, very convenient attack on independent media. You ban independent media from Facebook and Instagram. You put potential shadow banning restrictions on the content they can publish online. And third, VPNs are some of the biggest advertisers on independent media. So now, not only do they take away our reach on Facebook and Instagram, they want to shadow ban us, they want to take away our sponsors. To me, this is so outrageous because, we need a free and fair press for democracy to succeed. And here you go, bill after bill after bill is weakening that. And the CBC, CTV, Global, they all don't say anything, and it's. I find it very frustrating. Christine, is this unconstitutional? Do you guys plan to challenge this bill in court? Do you think it could be a successful challenge in court? Where do you think this is going?
So we're going to have to see. As I said, there's a lot of parts of this bill, so different parts of it would have different legal problems. I think we're going to have to see, because a lot of it, as I said, is not even clear. It's going to be determined by regulation. A lot of it will be in how it is actually implemented. It's hard to challenge just a law straight up without it being applied to some person and having something happen to some person. So in terms of a challenge, we're just going to have to wait and see if this bill passes, if it passes in its current form, how the regulations are developed, and once they're developed, how they are applied. So there is definite potential that it could violate the Section 8 guarantee in the Charter to be free from an unreasonable search and seizure.
And
that it could also violate protections for freedom of expression, which are guaranteed in Section 2B of the Charter by creating a chill on expression.
Those were all the questions I had, but was there something else about Bill C-34 that the audience should know about?
Yeah, we at the Canadian Constitution Foundation are fighting back against this bill. So if you want to send a letter to your member of parliament about C-34, you can go to the ccf.ca/stop C-34, stop the Carney government's internet censorship law. So you can visit our website, send a letter to your member of parliament. You can easily look up who your MP is on that website, and it will send the message from you automatically.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Christine, for coming on, and thank you for everything that you do at the CCF. You guys do great work.
Thanks for having me on. It's great to talk to you.
And this concludes our interview with Christine Van Geyn. I want to know what you think, so put your thoughts in the comments below. I also have a petition to tell Carney and the Liberals and the floor crossers, please stop Bill C-34 now. So that's in the description. I've also included a link to the Canadian Constitution Foundation website so you can learn about their actions to stop Bill C-34. Thank you so much for watching as always. Be sure you're subscribed, like and hype the video, hit the notification bell, and consider getting that paid channel membership if you can, because we do not take subsidies from the government here, and we never will. Until next time, God bless.